we all get to enjoy together, watching the life and the light leave Geoff Keighley's eyes when he reads his, sixth or seventh ad read for a gacha pull microtransaction anime waifu mobile game. And that's fun. That's right, folks. It's Gamer Discourse season. Geoff Keighley's The Game Awards nominations got announced this week, and there's something about this moment that is really depressing every year. For some reason, this inspires in people this need to get in these discoursey debates about, does it matter that my favorite game got nominated? Does it matter that my favorite game didn't get nominated? And not just like have this conversation, but get really heated about it. And I want to see if we can decompress this and choose to either enjoy them or not, and then move on with our lives. So let's think first and foremost, what are Geoff Keighley's The Game Awards? They're always going to be Geoff Keighley's The Game Awards, first and foremost. Point blank, I actually kind of like them. That is to say, I like the idea of somebody aspiring to games getting a cultural moment and reverent treatment on par with something like the Oscars, which I don't have them on record, but I think that's what Geoff Keighley dreams he's doing or hopes he's doing with this. And it is fun. Like, I only got into actually watching the show in the last 3 years. I used to just see like, oh, all the trailers are out, all the awards are announced, let's just go look at it the day after. It was actually that weird Mateo kid who did his trolling thing when Elden Ring won that made me go like, should I watch this?
I think I want to nominate this award to my Reformed Orthodox Rabbi Bill Clinton.
Because it did have this whimsical weirdness to it before you knew anything about the kid. And now that I know he's just a trolly comedian, it's not as funny, but it was funny in the moment. But that made me like start watching them the past few years, and I kind of like making an event of it. I'm an award season guy. I like watching the Oscars, and they're awkward. They're weird. Celebrities come out and are weird, but it's funny to see Harrison Ford come out and have no idea where he is, have no idea what he's talking about. That's fun. It's funny. Let it be funny. Let it be campy. Let it be silly. And that being said, this idea of an Oscars of video games. First of all, I'm going to say, like, I know it's not the Oscars of video games because the jury pool for the Game Awards is journalists. And I saw some discourse today about how people are mad that it's journalist.
It's those gaming journalists.
Because that means they're woke, I guess. He's like, you're not picking my favorite games because you're woke. I think it's fine for there to be an award show of a jury of journalists who have been covering video games for the past year. That makes sense. But it's not the Oscars. The Oscars is by the Academy. I forget the exact acronym of the Academy, but that's people who are actually in the industry. They're actually the people making movies. They have those awards for video games. So if that's your beef with Geoff Keighley's The Game Awards, then go watch those. You're not watching them because there's no marketing budget behind them. And this is like my discrepancy with Geoff Keighley and Geoff Keighley's The Game Awards, is that he does want this sort of Oscar prestige, but he or whoever, the team that builds these, chose a different model of nomination so that it creates this discrepancy of like, well, it's not the Oscars because it's not voted on by the industry, it's by journalists. Which again, it's fine to have journalist awards. But what they did do right is marketing and PR. There's a reason we're all making videos about it. There's a reason we're all talking about it on social media. It's because whether you like him or not, Geoff Keighley knows how to market. That's why we're talking about the Game Awards, and we're not talking about GDC Awards or the DICE Awards or whatever. So if that's your argument, is you don't like it because this is supposed to be the Oscars of whatever, you're the mark here. You're the fool because they have those awards. You just don't pay attention to them. If you think awards in general are bad, then just don't watch. It's fine. And the other thing people complain about this show itself a lot is you see this comment all over the place of more like video game commercials with awards snuck in between. And it's like, yeah, have you ever seen an award show? it's 60% commercials. You know, I'm not here to defend advertising, but if you're gonna sit down and watch an awards show, would you rather the commercials be new trailers from the medium that the awards are about, so video game trailers, or would you rather have it be like crypto ads, like the Super Bowl, ads for cars you're never going to be able to afford, like the Oscars or whatever, you know? So it's like, what? You want them to put this on for you for free, and you get to watch it for free, and you're going to complain about the trailers existing, but you're also going to give the trailers hundreds of thousands of millions of views. It's a very silly thing to be upset about. They still, you know, like they let people talk about as much as the Oscars. I haven't held a stopwatch to check. So again, either you hate all award shows or your beef is with something else, because it's just an award show. It's the same as any other in that regard of how much time is focused on the actual awards versus other silly things. And this discourse happens about the Oscars and the Grammys every year. It's just like people are going to have this discourse regardless. And on top of all this, I'm not making this video to defend Geoff Keighley. I think he's a weird guy. I think he's, you know, a Nepo baby who probably has a little bit of money from his parents. I believe they're like the IMAX people. Like they either created IMAX or led it for a long time. He surely has money from that. He considers the gaming industry his celebrities, and he likes to have proximity and access to them is the vibe you get. Hideo Kojima! And that's like fine. Like rich guys do that. And again, it's like, honestly, like there's so many worse things rich guys could be doing or are doing. Again, not defending him as a man, I don't care. But because people do kind of just have this sticking point of like being irked with him in some regard, there's worse things a rich kid could do with his money than put on a nice event where people in the industry of entertainment that you enjoy get to feel celebrated for a night. I worked in media and I never went to the award shows because I was like 2 layers removed. Even stuff that I like did a lot of the work on. There's one award that I'm like, no, I earned this award and my name wasn't even on it. But it's like, it is nice. Like your colleagues get excited and congratulate you and each other. And these were like really tiny, like regional broadcast awards. People like to feel awarded. They like to have a moment in the spotlight. It's nice to have a space where like that gets a mainstream pop culture moment for video games and more legitimizes the medium. I like the Game Awards for that reason. There's also a lot of discourse around the types of games that get nominated. This is another thing I don't know, I feel inclined to somewhat debunk in the regard that, like, let's say the top 3 or 4 categories. Those do end up being the same type of game. They end up being usually more like long-form narrative games or the big bombastic platformer or whatever. And this is where I admit my own subjectivity, my own taste, that there's nothing wrong if you're like a FIFA player. There's nothing wrong with being a Call of Duty player, or a Fortnite player, or whatever. But those are just like different experiences. But they do have lower awards for those. They've got best live service game, best like continuing game or multiplayer experience, and those things get recognized there. They've even got like esports player of the year, you know, or team of the year. So like that stuff's being addressed, and something like itches people to enter a discourse about it because their thing that they're a fan of is not the top bill that happens latest at night or whatever, and that means it's more important and somebody's looking down on you. And it's just like, again, my subjectivity is just kind of like, when it comes to video games as art form, there's something different about a like long form narrative experience or those platformers. The games that do win Game of the Year, I tend to think kind of are the ones who deserve it. They represent a deeper expression of usually a team of people unifying on a clear vision that they want to execute together. Whereas a multiplayer live service game, it's usually about like profit first, and that doesn't mean it can't be fun. That doesn't mean you can't enjoy it. There's nothing wrong with enjoying those, but they're not primarily intended as expressions of art first. But I'm in trouble. But I'm going to introduce this rule. This rule I have for how I engage with a piece of multimedia is, I've consumed enough video games, movies, TV, music in my lifetime in a very critical way that I know this is subjective. I'm not claiming any objectivity here, but I think I have a pretty keen sense of when I put something on, I can tell pretty well how much of the effort that went into this piece of multimedia came out of a desire to create a piece of art and how much came because it's a consumer product and you need to clear a certain, a margin of profit to give a return to your investors, to make sure that people don't get fired and you can still have a job for the next one, et cetera, et cetera. And my rule for myself is as long as I can feel it's like 51% somebody actually wanted to express something and wanted to make something, then I'm going to have a good time with it and I'll enjoy myself. But this gets into what actually was nominated for Game of the Year this year. So I played all of them short of Donkey Kong Bonanza because I didn't have the money to spend on a Switch 2, which only seems to have that one game at this point that makes it worth owning. And Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, it just was nowhere on my radar other than a few trailers. And the thing that turned me off to it is it looks first off like it's a first person sword swinger, I guess, sort of like Skyrim was, but those games usually kind of make me sick. I stay away from first person experiences usually, but this one in particular, every trailer I saw had a lot of these wide angle lens shots that I've noticed popping up in video games more and more lately. So what that means is like everything looks like weirdly spread out, like it's like rounded a little bit. Like weird little details like that will turn me off. Again, this is all subjective. I'm no authority on anything, but I played all the other four. So there's kind of this obvious support of my argument coming up in that the discourse around two of these games in particular, Clair Obscur Expedition 33 and Hollow Knight SILKSONG. Everybody's like, do you know how small the dev team was? Do you know how indie the dev team was? And then there's this other side of the argument of, you know how not indie the dev team was? They like even hired voice actors and animators, and I'm not getting into all that. That's not this video. But there is clearly a vision and a passionate team behind those two games. Whether you want to admit it or not, that just is not there. And I'm sorry I keep picking on FIFA and Fortnite, but like it's just not there in those games. And again, that's fine. They're just like a different type of product. It's like the difference between somebody who's gonna read like, the 800 to 1,000 page long form novels versus people who just want like a Pulp Fiction off a grocery store rack. Either way, it's like you're still reading. That's fine. Enjoy what you enjoy. The people who read the long stuff, some of them might just be boring themselves to try to convince themselves they're intellectually superior. Do what you enjoy. I'm not saying like, Expedition 33 or SILKSONG is Moby Dick, although I do have an argument brewing that SILKSONG might be the infinite jest of video games. But yeah, those games are made by people that you can just feel the passion oozing out of every little nook and cranny of it. While I really enjoyed Death Stranding 2, I really enjoyed Hades 2, and SILKSONG actually falls in this category too. These were things that like we've seen directly before. We've seen Hades 1, we've seen Death Stranding 1, we've seen Hollow Knight, and these games are just amazing, refined polishes on that. And this is all to say that I'm predicting, as I did the day it came out,
I already know this is the best video game of the year.
Expedition 33 is going to win. It's Game of the Year. That's just hands down. Easy, no argument there. That being said, I don't know if it's going to have the staying power of Elden Ring. It's a very different experience. It might actually depend on like what they do in terms of DLC and updates. If they keep like a fan base excited and alive and give them experiences to come back to the game to enjoy. Because I was obsessed with the game while I was playing it, and I was like really deeply emotionally involved in the story. But then I moved on from it pretty quickly. Like the experience didn't sit with me the way some games do. Yeah, that being said though, SILKSONG, this may be recency bias, but it like really hooked itself in me in a very satisfying, addictive way. It straddled the lines of everything I like in a game. It pulled all of them together in a way like most games only grab like one of these things. The story experience of it, even if you don't read every little piece of lore that comes up with every NPC dialogue and item you pick up and piece it all together, the story still comes through really strong. The motion of it is the most insanely precise I've ever experienced in my life, which then makes the challenge of it, gives you that feeling of every time you fail, you feel like it's fair, it's your fault, and it keeps you going. So my wife actually pointed this out in me when I was playing like the hard levels on Astrobot. They're like, those are just hard enough that like, give me 15 minutes and I'll get through them. Whereas SILKSONG was a little more difficult than that. But she was watching me play those levels with our kid one time, and I was doing that. I was just the one drilling it, and the kid wasn't taking the controller from me for a while. And she was like, oh, I get it. This is your, like, how you go into flow state, the way like somebody might do with like they're into crafting of some kind or something. I was like, yeah. SILKSONG has that endlessly. The other thing coming together is like the art direction is off the chain. It's so perfect. Everything feels right. Everything feels so lived in. Everything feels so polished. So like those three pieces all combined, but for some reason, Expedition 33 still ekes it out. And I think it goes back to this thing about the other three frontrunners is what I'm calling them, as I'm biased here just because they're the ones I played. All of them being sequels just makes them not feel as fresh. It's the fact that it's a fresh IP, but the thing Expedition 33 does that I haven't really seen in other games, because there is this moment right now in game development of like, this is a love letter to this style of game, right? And Expedition 33 falls in that camp in a lot of ways, but it's very confident in itself. It's saying this is what a Japanese role-playing game is now. It takes everything that we loved about JRPGs in the 90s and the early 2000s, all these little details of things that made those games magical, but there was still like a little bit of something that needed polished in them, and it fixes them and then combines them all into a new experience that is unlike any JRPG you've ever experienced. And yeah, it's French. JRPG is a genre. It's not just where the game is made. It is its own distinct thing. So if Baldur's Gate 3 was like, this is the modern version of Western RPGs, and that game got it that year, then Clair Obscur Expedition 33 is clearly this year's version of that, but for Japanese role-playing games. And for that, I think that's why it's going to win, probably. And I was right to call it in April. So there you go. If you're into award shows, tune in and enjoy it. If you're not, you can just log off until they're over. You don't have to be part of the discussion. You can just leave the room and then enjoy the trailers when they come out that night or the next day. It's as simple as that. You don't got to get mad. Let's just all enjoy celebrating video games. And if there's a game you think should have been, nominated, celebrated, whatever, feel free to comment me a recommendation and tell me to check it out. Peace out.
The game of the year 2025 was going to be made by a studio who found the formula to make it up here on stage. It's stupidly simple, but somehow it keeps on getting lost. Studio made their game because they wanted to make a game that they wanted to play themselves. They created it because it hadn't been created before. They didn't make it to increase market share. They didn't make it to serve as a brand. They didn't have to meet arbitrary sales targets or fear being laid off if they didn't meet those targets. And furthermore, the people in charge forbade them from cramming the game with anything whose only purpose was to increase revenue and didn't serve the game design. They didn't treat their developers like numbers on a spreadsheet. They didn't treat their players as users to exploit. And they didn't make decisions they knew were short-sighted and function of a bonus or politics. They knew that if you put the game and the team first, the revenue will follow. They were driven by idealism and wanted players to have fun. And they realized that if the developers didn't have fun, nobody was going to have any fun. They understood the value of respect, that if they treated their developers and players well, those same developers and players would forgive them when things didn't go as planned. But above all, they cared about their game because they loved games. It's really that simple.